Okay, my clock's reading just about 12 o'clock. So on the screen, you will see our opening slide. If you are here for the Screening and Problem Gambling live webinar, you're in the right place. Welcome. Thank you for spending your lunch hour with us. I am Diana Reuter. I'm here to assist with any technical stuff. So you can see there's an email on the bottom if you're having trouble getting in or any things with the live webinar, or after the webinar, any trouble with your certificates or the training center, you can reach out. We have here today Shanley O'Chevy from the Western PGRC staff. She will be presenting for us. It is March, which is Problem Gambling Awareness Month. Next Tuesday is screening day. So we are happy to have this great discussion with you today in preparation for screening day next week. On the screen, just some reminders. If you are interested in earning a certificate for today's webinar, you will have to log back into your training center after the live portion is over and complete your evaluation. Once you complete the evaluation, your certificate will automatically populate into the My Locker tab, and you can download and save from there. We do have another monthly webinar coming up in April. On April 10th, we will be doing a live webinar titled Socioeconomics and Gambling Harm. Registration for that will open after our conference next week, so mid-March. Registration will be open for that. If you want to be alerted, you can scan the QR code and join our email list, and we'll send you out an email when that registration is open. And next week, NYCPG and PGR staff will be hosting our annual conference in March. If you can make it, there is still time to register and join us. That'll be held in person in Albany. And with that, I'm going to hand this right over to Shanley.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Diana. Like Diana said, my name is Shanley. I am one of the Western program managers here. Oh, no. I had all my notes on my personal computer, and it just shut down on me and said it needed to do system updates. So here we go, guys. Thank you. It's always something, right? So yeah, I'm one of the program managers here in Western, myself and Angela. We answer the phone when people call looking for help, and we work really closely with all of our regional people here. And we'll talk a little bit more about the problem gambling resources on one of the sides. So I'm going to hope my personal computer starts up real quick so I can get all my notes back. In the meantime, I am going to start sharing my screen so that we can just kind of jump into it. And we'll go from there. Okay, can everyone see my screen okay and hear me okay?
Yes.
So, screening for problem gambling, like Diana said, it is Problem Gambling Awareness Month. So we want to take some time to kind of talk about this. This training goes a lot better when you guys participate. We want to have a conversation, okay, about how you screen in your organizations right now, whether it's for substances or anything else, and how we can kind of integrate screening for problem gambling. If you are already, kind of talking about gambling with your clients, different barriers that you see if you do bring gambling up, especially if it's not the primary concern, things of that nature. So like I said, we want to have a conversation here. You guys are the professionals. You do this. So with that being said, we are part of the New York Council on Problem Gambling. The New York Council on Problem Gambling is an independent nonprofit corporation dedicated to increasing public awareness about problem and compulsive gambling and advocating for support services and treatment for persons adversely affected by gambling. We maintain a neutral stance on legal gambling. Okay, and it looks like I got everything back up over here for my notes. So give me 1 second and I will get this situated. It's always something though, right? Okay. Okay, the Problem Gambling Resource Centers. We are split up regionally across the state. So we are here to help with that increasing public awareness, connecting those adversely affected by gambling with services. So like I said, we work closely with a network of private practice clinicians in our area, as well as different OASIS providers, addiction treatment centers, Smart Recovery, GA, Gam-Anon, all of those to really try to meet people where they are. When people call in, there's a live person. Like I said, it's myself or Angela in Western. Every region has a program manager or two to help facilitate these conversations. We offer help to the person who is experiencing problems with their gambling, as well as their affected others. So spouses, siblings, children, parents, anything like that. Okay. So we are here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, to help people. Let me just double check my notes here. If anyone's interested in any trainings, information, anything like that, feel free to reach out to your local Problem Gambling Resource Center. The link is right there. Okay. So we're going to jump into this. I know Diana said there were some familiar names. So also what we want to do is we want to make sure we're all starting on the same page with what constitutes gambling. So if anyone wants to unmute, we don't have a huge group, or put in the chat, how would you define gambling? If you were to look up gambling in the dictionary, what would you say it is? Anyone want to volunteer?
Risk?
Risk. Great, thank you. No? That's okay.
There's also a chance, I think.
Yes. So how we define gambling here is risking something of value for the chance of a reward. And it's really important that we all kind of have that basic agreement on the definition, as well as when you're talking to your clients to kind of talk about what gambling is. What we find a lot when we're talking to clients on the phone is that people have a narrow view of what gambling is. They might not consider lottery tickets gambling. They might not consider bingo gambling. Some people have the view if they're not physically going into a casino, they're not gambling. So if you ask someone a question like, how often do you gamble? They might genuinely, going off their definition, say never, but they could be going, to bingo multiple times a week or doing mobile sports betting, but they're not considering that gambling. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Has anyone kind of had this conversation with any clients that they're willing to share? All right, and we also want to talk about what value is. Value does not necessarily mean money. So it can be, property, jewelry, potentially even other humans with human trafficking. And it could be something silly. I mean, you hear like kids talking about in the cafeteria, like, I bet you my cookie, you can't chug this entire thing of soda without getting sick, or something like that. Like, we all do it, even if it's dirty diapers, something like that. Like, I bet you I can do X, Y, and Z. And if I win, you're on diaper duty for 24 hours or something. So it's not always a cash value attached. Sometimes it is other things. Okay. All right, so in the chat, if we want to talk about what are some different types of gambling opportunities in New York State that people have come into contact with. Now that we've maybe expanded our definition, can anyone think of anything that they want to share? Bingo, daily fantasy, sports betting websites, horse racing. Great, thank you for that, guys.
Basket raffles, video games.
Basket raffles. Some people do not consider basket raffles, video games, loot boxes. Let's get to this next slide right here. So the different types of gambling that we see. And we touched on a few of these: pull tabs, scratch off. A lot of people don't consider scratch off tickets gambling. So dice and card games, the casinos. We talked about video games. Sometimes it is just like a casino type game that's in a video game, but there's also loot boxes. Are people familiar with what loot boxes are?
No.
Work in gambling activities past the time, exactly. We hear that sometimes when we speak to people who have been incarcerated. You're there, you might as well play cards or something like that. It's something to pass the time. Okay. So loot boxes are something that exist in video games, and the UK has designated them as a form of gambling officially. So you spend real money to buy so you spend your real money, whether it's PayPal, debit card, what have you, to buy the video game dollars. So whether it's Robux, Pokecoins from Pokemon Go, anything like that, and then you buy a box, a mystery box. You don't know what's in it. So you're spending real money to get this mystery box, and it could be something really cool, like a shield or a weapon or something to help you level up in the game. Or it could be something like a t-shirt for your character to wear. So if we go back to kind of what our definition of gambling was, risking something of value for the chance of a reward, loot boxes fall under that, right? You're risking your real money for a chance to get something that could help you. And where it kind of gets a little muddy with those is a lot of these loot boxes are in games that children are playing or teens or youth. So it's kind of getting their brain triggered by that. Okay. Similar with some of the video games having casinos that you can go into. So in the video game, you can go to the casino and play those games. So you're kind of already recognizing the games and it's kind of becoming part of your life. Okay. All right, let me check the chat. March Madness, 'tis the season. March Madness is coming for us. Okay. Third slide. Okay, so we're going to go over some key findings from an OASIS prevalence study from 2020. What has happened since 2020, though? What have we been doing here since 2020? All right, we're coming out of a post-COVID world, post-lockdown world, and also in New York State, mobile sports betting has been legalized. So some of these statistics we're going to talk about. I'm very interested to see what the next study says as far as our problem gambling statistics, because we know it'll be very different just based on what we're hearing anecdotally from callers. Okay. So we have 4.4% of New York State adults are considered at-risk gamblers. An additional 0.7 are diagnosed with gambling disorder. So gambling disorder is in the DSM-5 now. There's a set criteria, and if your client meets a certain number of those criteria within the previous 12 months, they can be officially diagnosed. 30 to 44-year-olds were the second highest at-risk age group. Does anyone want to guess what the highest risk age group was? Seniors, they are considered an at-risk group. Not the number one, but at risk because they're typically retired. There might be some more disposable income. 18 to 22 or 24. Let me double check. Let me scroll down. It was at 18 to 24-year-olds. Okay. Let me move the chat. I can't see. Okay. And those who met the criteria were less likely to think gambling could be a problem. All right, and now I'm going to read you just some straight statistics. It's numbers, so forgive me for just blindly reading, but if I try to rattle them off the top of my head, they won't come out right. And also proximity matters. The New York City and Mid-Hudson residents had the highest rate. That is also because there's so many opportunities there, like brick and mortar opportunities with casinos, horse racing, things like that. In addition to it being so widely available on our mobile devices, it is also physically there. There's a lot of opportunities as well. Okay, so like I said, forgive me, I'm about to just straight read some statistics so that I do not mess it up. Also, the higher the educational attainment of the gambler, the less likely they are to be classified as a problem gambler. The percentage of problem gamblers among the least educated gamblers was 21.8%, whereas the percentage of problem gamblers among the most educated was 5.4. So least educated, 21.8, most educated is 5.4. And also the higher gambler's income, the less likely they are to be classified as a problem gambler. So the percentage of problem gamblers among the poorest gamblers is at 24.1%, whereas the percentage of problem gamblers among the highest income is 11.2%. And there could be a few things with that. You know, a lot of times people might not necessarily consider their gambling a problem if the bills are paid. If they are still able to meet their financial requirements every month, they might not consider it a problem. It's more kind of considered a recreational thing. So that's interesting as well. And that's another reason why it's really important to make sure we are universally screening, because it can help weed out maybe our implicit or explicit biases towards people. If we're asking everyone, we're going to get a true snapshot of what's really going on, and we don't have to worry about it maybe coming across as targeting or anything like that. If we're asking everyone, everyone gets asked. Okay, does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns about any of the statistics or the prevalence study? No? Okay. That's fine. So now we're going to talk about some barriers to integrating problem screening. Okay, so we are aware that screening is already lengthy. It's already a lot to do. People get question fatigue. They don't want to answer questions anymore. So we have this lack of awareness about problem gambling, lack of educational resources about problem gambling. That's one of the things we're finding this past year. We did a lot of work with recovery centers. And one of the consistent themes that came out was people want to learn more. They want more training on that. Lack of policies about problem gambling. We talk about football squares, brackets. I mean, that's a pretty common occurrence in workplaces, especially around this time of year. So, you know, maybe asking people to review their zero tolerance gambling policies, realizing that sports brackets and things do count. And gambling is also talked about as a hidden addiction. There's no real outward signs. So you don't know what people are maybe working through or in recovery from. The assumption that those with substance use disorder aren't at risk. And like I said, it's one more thing to do. When the screening is universal, like I kind of briefly mentioned in the past slide, it reduces the stigma. You know, it's part of the regular conversation. We're bringing it up. We're bringing it up frequently. And we are all busy with that. You know, like I said, there's a lot of screening questions. You guys ask a lot of questions, and we can't tell by looking at someone or, you know, inferring information if they do have maybe having some issues with their gambling. Like we said, it is the hidden addiction for a reason. And we can help with that. Your local PGRC can help with the training, the access, the resources, if you or anyone at your organization is unsure or wants to learn more. Okay, do we have any questions or anything? Is anyone here already doing problem gambling screening on a regular basis that maybe wants to share anything that they have found or barriers that they have found? Right. Motivators. Okay. Gambling can become a relapse trigger for some people. I hear that on the phone from people once in a while. What we find, I hear from some people is they'll call and they say, I have been clean from X for 5 years, but I'm noticing my gambling is following a similar pattern. I'm having similar thoughts, the compulsive feelings that go with it. So we know that that can happen with some people too. Okay, Naira Near, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Universal Screening and Homeless Service System. And we do hear that a little bit with people that help lower income. When you do the budget on paper, you know, it looks okay, like the money should be there. But then when you start asking about the scratch offs and things like that, and you kind of start totaling it up, you realize where the money is going. And there can be a lot of mental health diagnoses as well when it comes with gambling. So like I said, the screening, the universal, can really help with that, uncovering some issues. Okay. My chat box is covering up my screen and I can't see it. Okay. Gambling may secondary, no cost. We talked about that. PGRCs can get you free training. We're doing it right now. And we want to talk about it. Make it universal so that it's not quote unquote a thing when we talk about it. Okay. So basic integration, 822s are required, the OASIS designation to be screening. So we want to make sure staff is educated. That's part of what we're doing here. Awareness, the Problem Gambling Awareness Month, our conference. Like I said, that's a big thing of what we do. Like so many mental health diagnoses, we want to make sure we're using compassionate language that can really help with the stigma and helping people feel safe and comfortable talking to us. And we want to incorporate the gambling and the potential harms into the daily work. Okay. I don't know. Okay, our words have power. Language is not just a means of communication. It shapes our thoughts, perceptions, and attitude. It is our collective responsibility to be mindful of the words we use and the narratives we propagate, for they profoundly impact the lives of those affected by gambling addiction. And Keith White, the former executive director of the National Council on Problem Gambling, said that. So language matters. We know this as mental health professionals, you know that. We've kind of briefly touched about it here. We want to get rid of the stigma. We want people to feel comfortable talking to us. And if we kind of incorporate some of this language into our daily lives, you don't really know who's listening. If someone's kind of looking for help and they're kind of trying to get a read on you as a peer or a mental health professional, if they maybe would feel safe talking to you, we want to make sure our language is compassionate all the time. Okay. So watch your language. Stigmatizing language that we don't use. Problem gambler, addict, compulsive, degenerate. Degenerate's just not a nice word. Pathological, disordered. Person first. I know we talk about that in a lot of different ways with a lot of different conditions, diagnoses. We want to do person first. They are a person first. So a person affected by problematic gambling, affected by addiction, the gambling behaviors have become problematic, experiencing gambling harms, and experience with gambling related harms. So these are some of the different phrases we can use and the language we can use instead of the ones on the other side of the screen. Does anyone have any experience with switching up their language or what they find when they're in the community talking to people with language other people are using?
Yeah, I can definitively say that I one time I realized that you shouldn't say mental health services to certain demographics, like probably like an immigrant-based community, because they just see the mental word in a negative way. So something I've noticed.
No, thank you for sharing, Chester. That's really, and that also, like Chester mentioned, different people with different backgrounds, different cultures might perceive certain words differently. So that's why it's also really important to understand your community makeup, who could potentially be coming in, and we want to be culturally competent, right? Okay. So now we are going to start getting into kind of the meat of this, so to speak. So like we talked about, we want to universally screen, protects us from our implicit and explicit biases and normalizes the primary prevention aspect of screening. We want to try to make sure our feedback is being done in a collaborative way. We know that help works best when people are involved in their treatment plan, when people are comfortable, when they understand, and when they're truly ready for help. And that can kind of that just helps support that relationship you have with your client, that trust and respect that goes both ways. Okay, and it's a normal human response to push back when others are trying to decide for us what our autonomy is. So that's why it's important to have that back and forth discussion, open-ended questions, the ask, offer, ask format, and we'll briefly touch on that as well. Okay. Okay, so starting the conversation. We always want to start with a open-ended, warm welcoming. So we want to raise the issue. We want to kind of mention gambling, maybe the definition, especially if you're hearing someone, in maybe an initial assessment, initial meeting, they're mentioning maybe some gambling behaviors, gambling talk. Want to normalize the conversation. Like we said, we don't want it to feel like a new or scary thing. We want it to be part of the regular conversation. And we want to ask permission to provide care. So, does anyone want to volunteer how they might raise the issue or some language that they might use for doing this? You can just take yourself off mute if you're comfortable. It's kind of a lot to type. It's easier to just talk.
Well, if I wanted to speak to someone about a problem gambling addiction, what I would say is I notice, certain patterns, or if I am reviewing bank statements, I would say that I'm noticing certain charges on the bank statement, and
Mhm.
hopefully that person will be comfortable enough, family or spouse, to let you know what's going on.
No, thank you
I
for
would
that.
start it off in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to keep it non-confrontational as best
Right.
as you can,
Yeah.
because we don't want people to feel defensive, because that automatically puts it in a non-productive conversation kind of space. So this is, something that could help. I'd like to ask you some questions about how gambling has impacted your life and explore if you'd like to make any changes, right? We want them to feel included. And explore if you'd like to make any changes to your gambling, if that's okay with you. We ask everyone these questions to make sure we are providing you with the best care based on your needs, right? Universally asking. We don't want people to feel singled out or like you are making assumptions about them based on, any range of factors. Okay. All right, let me just check my notes. Okay. We want to also keep in mind language to different types of gambling. Like we said, people might not consider scratch offs, things like that. So, how I'd like to ask you some questions about how poker has impacted your life. Maybe if you hear them mentioning poker or bingo, maybe slide in the actual word that they're using. Okay. So we are going to set the stage with defining gambling, like we said with our clients, to make sure everyone's on the same page as to what gambling is. Something of value, like we mentioned, it's not necessarily money. We talked about, cookies, diaper duty, things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be cash. It could be lots of things. Everyone value is different for everyone. All right. And gambling can include, we kind of talked about this, scratch offs, casino, betting on sports, playing the numbers. Okay. And we want to check the client's knowledge of playing, wagering, or betting types by inquiring of regional, cultural, or alternative methods of gambling. So like we said, cultural competency, knowing your demographics, knowing your neighborhood, to make sure we're kind of hitting it at all the levels. Okay. And then are there any other forms of wagering or betting you know of in your community? Maybe that I haven't mentioned?
I know this is out of the way, but I met with two of the providers, and one of the providers mentioned sex, and the other, provider mentioned dating apps. And I didn't know that that ties in to the problem gambling aspect of it. So that I wanted to mention that as well.
No, that's interesting. Now I want to know more about the dating apps and how that's playing into it. Okay, there's also dog fighting, animals, things like that that aren't on here. Let me check the chat. I don't know if anything's come through in the chat. Okay.
I keep
Okay.
hearing about coin tossing.
Coin tossing,
Mm-hmm.
50-50 shot. Those are decent odds, right?
Stanley, somebody mentioned sneakers.
Sneakers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the youth around here are betting and trading and all this stuff with sneakers.
Yeah. Because I heard someone, I was
I would be
traveling.
livid as a mother if my son went to school in one pair of sneakers and came home in another.
I
Livid.
was traveling somewhere and I heard one of the teenagers, he was saying that he uses sneakers as a source of betting, and so he, you know, sold his sneakers for over $500. And I guess he was, trying to negotiate another deal, but he was saying that if they don't, give him what he's asking, he's not going to sell it. So the sneakers is really I didn't think of it in that way, but you can make a lot of money off of that. And it can tie in with the problem gambling aspect.
Oh yeah. I'm trying to fund it, get the cash to do it. There's a will, there's a way. And like I said, value. Some people, I mean, I'm not a sneaker person. You know what I mean? I'm just not. It's not into me. But I even know my son is in 4th grade and some of his friends are super into their basketball sneakers already. They're 9 years old. So I can see like if you're a sneaker person, how that could, factor in. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so the OASIS approved assessment and screening tools. We will not be discussing all of these today. We are just going to kind of go over 3 of the screening tools. We are going to do LIBET, Brief Biosocial, and NODS Clip. So has anyone used any of these tools before? No? Okay, that's fine. There's more information. You can OASIS there. It's on OASIS's website. You can get more information on all of them, including like the full printout of each one to utilize. Okay. Okay, like I said, these are the ones we're going to go over. They're pretty quick. The LIBET is only 2 questions. It's very quick, but it's kind of useful if you just want to like plant the seed in someone's brain. If maybe you feel that they are not going to be open to a full conversation, maybe just plant the seed a little bit to kind of get them thinking. Okay. Okay, brief biosocial. So this is pretty popular because it is available in over 10 different languages. So that can be really helpful for different areas as well. I know in Western New York, the past few years, we've had an influx of immigrants and refugees who speak Bengali. So having things available in different languages can be really helpful. Like I said, even if it's just to kind of get them to start thinking about it. So during the past 12 months, have you become restless, irritable, or anxious when trying to stop or cut down on your gambling? During the past 12 months, have you tried to keep family or friends from knowing how much you've gambled? And during the past 12 months, did you have any such financial trouble as a result of your gambling that you needed to get help with living expenses? So answering yes to any of these means a person is at risk for developing a gambling problem. So, broader conversation, maybe start using one of the larger assessment tools. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. NODS CLIP, National Opinion Research Center Diagnostic Screen for Problem Gamblings, Control Lie Preoccupation Subscale. It's a big mouthful. Okay. So this addresses 3 of the different diagnostic criteria for gambling disorder in the DSM-5. So that can be useful too, because it can directly connect to that. So they're all very similar type questions. They're all yes, no, because we don't necessarily want people coming up with caveats with whether or not, what their answer is. So similar, have you ever tried to stop, cut down, or control your gambling? Have you ever lied to family members or others about how much you gamble or how much money you've lost on gambling? And have there been periods lasting 2 weeks or longer when you've spent a lot of time thinking about your gambling experiences or planning out future gambling ventures or bets? So similar to the previous one, an answer of yes to one of these indicates a risk and a bigger conversation that needs to be had. Does anyone have any questions about this one? Lie bet, like I said, this one is kind of easy when you're out in the community, because why isn't my mouse working? Please. Okay. So this is valid, reliable, and often the choice tool used in intake forms, because intake forms are already very long, right? We ask a whole host of questions about mental health, housing, food, substances, things like that. And adding 2 more questions just kind of works, as opposed to 17 or 3 or 4. And they're pretty straightforward. Less words than the other ones. So similar, one answering yes indicates the person is at risk for problem gambling. Brief intervention and offer for referral for further assessment. So like I said, getting someone thinking, planting that seed, and then if they need to maybe do a little bit more, you can. Has anyone ever used the Lie Bet screen out in the world in their practice or community outreach or anything? No? Okay. If anyone has used it, have you ever had, how do clients seem to feel about the questions? Or any of the screening tools? I guess we can open it up. Check my chat. Nope. Okay, that's fine. So now we're going to move on to providing feedback for a positive score. So we want to provide the personalized feedback indicated by their screening score. So, engage the participant. We want to discuss the implications of the indicated risk. We want to remember that this is just a guideline. This isn't set in concrete. People can move back and forth on the spectrum. And we really just want to start the conversation with here before we get into a deeper conversation. We want to make sure we're prepared to discuss what each risk level indication may mean. Earlier, I mentioned the ask, offer, ask format for doing these. We want to ask a question like, what do you think about the consequences of your gambling? Has your gambling had any consequences in your life? So we want to start with a question, engage them with a question, and then offer more information. So I'm hearing that your spouse is getting irritated with your mobile sports betting. Can I add some information about mobile sports betting to what you just said? And then ask, how does that make you feel? How is that information sitting with you? And we want them involved when we're doing this, right? Like we said in the beginning, treatment works best when someone is truly ready for it and involved with it. So we want to ask them, like, what are your personal strengths and accomplishments that can help with these? We want to let them know that we will revisit these when we move into the support recovery, but what are your tools that you already have that could help with this? Okay. Okay. Ask participants what they think. Like I said, how does this make you feel? Do you have any questions, concerns, all right? Like I said, open-ended questions. This is where we want open-ended questions. When we're screening, we want simple, straightforward, yes or no. But here, once we start talking about things and getting ready for treatment, we want to really engage them with some open-ended questions to see how they feel about everything. We want their perspective, how they're feeling. How does gambling fit into your life? What is your level of understanding with how this is impacting your work life, your professional life, your personal life? The client is the expert in their life, right? We don't know what they do really. They know their life. So we want to listen for change talk. So phrases that indicate they're ready to change. They want their relationship or participating in gambling to be different. So it would be nice. So if they're starting to say things like, it would be nice to save that money, instead of going to the slots, maybe pay off the car faster or take my family to vacation or something like that. Information like that. The presence of change talk usually indicates that that person is in the contemplating stage. The absence of change talk might mean they're in the stage before that, which is pre-contemplation. So contemplation is they're really thinking about making a change. They're maybe ready for it. Pre-contemplation is they're not necessarily ready to make a change, but maybe that seed has been planted. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Does anyone have any experience with this sort of information? Not with gambling, but maybe screening for other things, substances, alcohol.
Yes, we routinely screen for substance use related concerns using, a motivational interviewing approach. And so
That's
this really relates to that. Thanks.
Awesome. So I'm glad you are already doing that. And that this can kind of help blend. You already have the experience with the open-ended questions. That's great. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So we're going to utilize scaling questions. So the importance of the change in their life, their confidence, how confident they are that they are able to make that change. So if someone says, so in your conversations with someone, they kind of gauge themselves around a 4. That's great. I'm glad you're at a 4. What do you think would need to happen to get you to a 6? Or if, this is part of your regular conversations, in a session 2 weeks ago, the client mentioned that they were maybe at a 1 and now, they say they're at a 4. Well, what happened to get you there? What changed and how confident are you in your ability to keep moving up this scale? Okay. And then we want the client to kind of do some reflection, right? We want to, based on the information provided and that you guys have already talked about, we want to take a moment to reflect on the information on what they might want to do next. Are they interested in more support? What does help look like for them? Do they maybe want to link up with GA or Smart Recovery? Or do they want to maybe look at getting set up with a peer, someone to talk to, someone who has already been through it? Things like that. All right. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. What time is it? Okay. All right. We want to summarize the discussion, make sure everyone's on the same page. What I'm hearing you say is blah, 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 blah. We want to take X, Y, and Z steps next. Are we all on the same page? How does that make you feel? Did I miss anything? Am I understanding correctly? Okay. Next steps. Okay. So what is the next step? Are we looking at harm reduction? Are we going full abstinence? Is this person already in recovery for something else? Do they maybe already have some steps built in? I have had a client or 2 call that is in recovery for something else, is recognizing the gambling, and they just need kind of a few tune-up sessions, for lack of a better word. They meet with a clinician 2-3 times to kind of work through it, and then they feel confident with the tools they have because they're already in recovery for something to continue the recovery from gambling. So we want to keep that in mind too. Okay. Treatment planning. So maybe if gambling wasn't the initial thing they came into, they presented for, but it's come up. What is the primary concern? What are we more focused on right now? How does gambling affect recovery from your primary concern? We want to develop harm reduction, abstinence, what works for them? What is a reasonable time or spending limit? Do you have someone at home who can kind of take over the finances? We hear that sometimes where, you know, the parents, if it's a younger college age, 18 to 24-year-old, maybe their parents take over their money, all their finances, and they get an allowance. That can be kind of tough as for a young adult to swallow. But sometimes it's what they need to make sure they don't, you know, cause some serious financial issues for themselves. In the same realm, sometimes it's the spouse that takes over. The person, you know, kind of has a set limit. This is what they get. Everything else, all the debit cards, credit cards, bank accounts, are put under the control of a different person. Okay. And referral for further evaluation. So if something else is needed, you can reach out to your local problem gambling resource center and we can go over options with you. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Okay, we've got about 10 slides left and 15 minutes-ish. Okay, so referral for treatment. The New York State Hope Line is always open 24 hours, 7 days a week, holidays included. Confidential support. We work with them. We get direct transfers from them during the our business hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. The problem gambling resource centers are not open on major holidays. So we do work with the Hope Center. They are the Hope Line, rather. They know our clinicians. We can get the clinician names directly from them. Online, there's also the Oasis online provider and program search. There are several organizations who are Oasis providers in New York State that also have their quote unquote G designation. So they have an additional layer to help gambling clients. Okay. And if it's a brief screening, that doesn't necessarily mean the conversation's over. Like we talked about, we want to share that oftentimes harmful gambling behaviors can be a replacement for something else, whether it is a substance or an outlet for something else. Some people, you know, it's a way to escape. It's a way to feel that they are being social, they're getting out of the house, something like that. And go over different harm reduction strategies. Like we talked about, a lot of the apps for mobile sports betting, you can kind of place limits on yourself. There's also the voluntary self-exclusion program through New York State, where you can kind of legally sign yourself out of these facilities. We also have people on staff that can help with that. Okay. Let me check my notes. Okay, another thing people can do is incorporate problem gambling education. So you are here right now, you are learning. We also have, you know, a problem gambling 101 class. We have a mobile sports betting course. We have emerging trends. Just reach out to your local person, see what different trainings they offer, and you can try to set something up. We also want to make sure people are aware of the similarities between problem gambling disorder and substance use disorder. There's a lot of differences, but there's also a lot of overlap with those. Okay, let me check my notes. Oh, we are working, I forgot, a 4-part educational series will be available this year for programs to utilize. So a train the trainer. So your staff can learn from our staff how to present problem gambling and to your clients. So starting that conversation with them, like we talked about here, the definitions, things like that, getting everyone on the same page. So like I said, a 4-part educational series for Train the Trainer that we're working on right now. And you can also reach out to your local problem gambling resource center for that information. Okay. So this is our chain, New York Council on Problem Gambling. There's our mission statement again. The PGRCs, which are part of the New York Council on Problem Gambling. Our goals are increasing public awareness and connecting people to care, whatever that care looks like. We do not mandate, you know, a set number of sessions, so to speak, with a clinician. by calling, you can just get some information just to have some things in your back pocket for later. But we really do feel that help works best when people are ready and that when you are involved in your treatment plan. So we want it to work for you. We want it to work for the affected others. So there's no, by calling us, you are not, you know, automatically agreeing to anything. There's no requirements for that. And also OASIS, we work very closely with OASIS on this, you know, to make sure we're meeting New Yorkers' needs. Okay. Opportunities to learn more. Our conference is next week in Albany, the March 11th to the 13th. So you can scan that QR code to learn more. There is still time to register. It is fully in person, just so you know, but we can get you some more information on that as well. Resources and support, where to find things. If you work, you know, for an organization and you would like some more information on obtaining your OASIS gambling designation, you know, we have someone on staff that can help with that too. We really just want to help people. And we have the free trainings. You're at one right now, guidance documents, all of that. And you will have access to these slides, so don't feel like you have to frantically click on slides and get things up and bookmarked and everything. Okay. National Gambling Disorder Screening Day. It's always the second Tuesday of March to go with Problem Gambling Awareness Month. And we do obviously want you to screen every client every day, but we understand that can be a lift. So start out with Screening Day. Get a nice little snapshot of your clients and what's going on. We do the work for you. We have a kit that you can get. Okay. Thank you. All right, we have an e-screener that people can use. It's convenient, it's anonymous, it's confidential, and you can do it on your very own phone. You don't have to, you know, necessarily talk to anyone because we know that talking to someone can be scary at first. Okay. Our Gambling Disorder Screening Day Toolkit. You can go to that link. There's a video, a next steps document, a brief SparkNotes version, so to speak, of this training that, you know, you can share with staff or peers in your area to kind of go from there. Does anyone have any questions about anything? I know I'm kind of like bumping through these last few slides, but I do know we're coming to the top of the hour. Does anyone have any questions about PGAM, Problem Gambling Awareness Month, screening? Does anyone have any thoughts on how they could incorporate this information? No? Okay. Well, thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for coming. I did put in the chat the link directly to our website where we have the Problem Gambling Awareness Month information and also the Screening Day Toolkit. So you can easily access those for you and for your clients and for your locations. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. So thank you for joining us for this lunch hour. Again, just a reminder, you will need to log into your training center account to complete the evaluation in order to earn the certificate. Even if you don't need a certificate, please provide us with your feedback. That helps us to grow and offer more trainings like these. We do have a monthly schedule. So next month, just a reminder, April 10th is our next live webinar, Socioeconomics and Gambling Harm. Registration will open after our conference. As Shanley said, next week, all of our staff will be all hands on deck in Albany for the conference. Many of you we will be seeing there. We look forward to it. And if you're interested and local, join us. There is still plenty of room to come to the conference.
And also this month, our blog post, we have a monthly blog, but our blog post was Understanding Problem Gambling, why screening is so important. I put it in the chat. It just came out today. So it kind of goes with the theme. So click on it, read it.
Yes, we have a couple of thank yous in there, a couple of thumbs up. So we appreciate your time. And again, reach out to your local resource center or to NYCPG for any additional information.
All right, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Happy PGAM.